So first things first, Eric, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you.
Good.
So before we get into the latest record, I'd like to jump back to the beginning a little bit.
Okay.
And I believe you are from a quite musical family.
I am, yeah.
So what role did music play as you were growing up?
It was just always there. I mean, it was always singing and playing. My mother played in some bands in the 70s, and it was kind of a unique dynamic because my mother was the musician, and still is. She's a vocal and piano teacher now, and my father was a naval commander, so it was very strict. So I had this mix of very strict with my father and very musical and free with my mother. So it was a good dynamic. It sort of set me up for success later because with the strict aspect, I got a good work ethic, and I had a job when I was 14 years old. Okay. And I've always had a job.
What did you do at 14?
I cleaned tables at a Korean restaurant. Okay. Yeah. So from then on, I had a job. I've been everything from I've done industrial installation. I've been a carpenter. I was a carpenter for a lot of years. That was sort of my trade. The work ethic side of doing what we do and being successful, that really helped with that. But the musical side there was always music in the house. I have 4 younger sisters, and we were always singing. We'd perform together, and my mother would make us perform together in church. Like we'd go to church and have to sing, and I was never very comfortable doing that, but
Were they gospel hymns, that type of stuff?
Yeah, like hymns and stuff. Yeah, that kind of thing. So, but we grew up with you talk about things that come back around later. We grew up with a lot of watching musicals on television, and Rodgers and Hammerstein or things like that. We were always watching. There were always people singing on TV and everywhere in my house. Always. So, and there were always instruments around. So there was always piano and guitars and trumpets, and there was always stuff everywhere. So we were always being musical with something.
So that was very much encouraged.
Yeah.
Because I read you played trombone in high school. You played piano, guitar.
Did, yeah. I played. Middle school, I started playing trombone, and my grandfather was a professional trombone player, and he played. He was out in California and played with the Dorseys and all the big band stuff. So my mother decided I was going to play trombone. And I was not very good at it.
Did you like it?
Still not. No, I didn't like it at all. I actually didn't like it one bit. I was so good at trombone that when I got to high school, they put me in the drum line. I played drums. So that's how good I was at trombone. So, when
did the type of music that you are known for now kind of enter that picture?
Oh man, when I got my first electric guitar, I forget how old I was. I was probably 12 years old when I got my first electric guitar. We'd always had acoustic guitars around. In fact, there was a tenor guitar that my father had that my mother had gotten from my father. My father, I'm not necessarily saying he played it, but a tenor guitar only has the top 4 strings, so it's D, G, B, E, and that's it. So it was easy for me to learn because you could play a G chord with 1 finger, or a C chord with 2 fingers, and it was really easy to learn on. So I had that, and then I got an electric guitar that my father didn't want me to have, but my mother got it for me anyway. And that was about the time that And Justice for All had come out, and I'm aging myself right now. Appetite for Destruction, these types of records. That was the same time period. So it was sort of when hair metal was sort of in its heyday. But then I was sort of, I was like my sisters liked the super glam stuff like Poison and all that, and I liked Poison too. I'll admit it. I heard "Talk Dirty to Me" on the radio, and like that riff, when you're 12 years old or 11 years old, that's like it's the coolest thing you've ever heard. For me it was.
They have a couple of good songs, certainly.
So and I didn't, at that time I didn't care who they were or anything. I just thought the sound was neat, So. So it was immediately, man. It was rock and roll, and it was never anything else. I mean, I listened to. But it was a unique time to be a kid too, because hip hop was starting to come on too at the time. So just about around that time, you had Aerosmith and Run DMC doing "Walk This Way," and it was like, you're hearing all these unique things coming together. But I was always more into the rock and roll aspect of things for sure, and so it just never left me, and so I just gravitated toward anything that had a loud guitar in it,
You mentioned you've always had jobs, so when and I know this isn't like a decision I'm going to go in music, but when did it become clear to you that music was your path?
I've been, and this is not a. This could have gone either way. I could have not been successful, but I still had this feeling. When I was before I even got my first electric guitar, I'm in shop class, which is shop class in the States is where they would send boys in to work with wood and metal and stuff like that in middle school, and they'd send women to. This is a long time ago. They'd send women into home economics, and they learn how to cook and do all this other stuff, right? But in shop class, I built a fake wooden guitar. Like I just cut the shape out and put a fake neck on it, and I drew frets on the neck. I just knew I wanted to play guitar, but I didn't have an electric guitar. But this thing, it was homemade, had no strings, had no electronics. It was just something to fake, in the mirror. And I would stand in front of the mirror and play this fake guitar that I had made. And I think that I knew without a doubt at 12, 13 years old, that I wasn't going to do the same thing everybody else did, that I was going to do something different, I don't know if it, and it was a very strong, I call it a knowing. I just had this knowing that I was going to I wasn't going to sit in an office, I wasn't going to, do what everyone else did, and so that feeling it was with me from a very young age. I was just really lucky that it worked out. Sure. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are very, very dear friends who are much more talented than I am, and have worked just as hard as I've worked and haven't had the luck that I've had to arrive where I am. So it can go any direction. But yeah, it was very, very young. I just knew. In fact, I went to college for a year and wasted money and wasted time and money because I went to college and I sat in my room at college and just played guitar all day. I never went to class. So that's all I did. That's all I wanted to do. So I came home from 1 year of college and I wasted scholarships and everything else. And I just told my parents I wasn't meant to do that.
How did they react? Because you mentioned the kind of the two sides of it. My father initially, well, they were all that thought I was stupid. It was a dumb mistake. It was a mistake. As well. It was a mistake. What's that? Your mother thought that as well.
Oh yeah.
But she
thought it was a mistake. Because in the States, it's funny because only a small percentage of jobs require you to have a degree. But everybody thinks that's the way to success. It's like, go get a degree, you'll be successful. That's not necessarily the case. You got generations of people now who are in debt, from school loans and whatever, and because they can't get jobs, and a lot of the greatest jobs out there don't require you to have any sort of education. But at the time, they were like, this is a mistake. You're going to fail. You're going to fall on your face, and but it was really amazing because I went, like I said, I went and got a job as a carpenter. At the time, my father had retired, and my father's I think I was born when he was almost 40 years old, so he's much older. So he had retired, but he was bored, and I said, "Why don't you come work with me?" I did trim work on houses, so I did all the molding and stairwells and art type of stuff, finish work. And I said, "I think you'd enjoy it. Why don't you come work with me?" So my father, for 2 years, he and I worked together, and during that time, I think he really saw the passion that I had for trying to make it because I was. I'd have to be on the job site at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 a.m., and I'd work until 4 or 5, and I'd get in a van with a bunch of guys, and we'd go drive and play a show, 4 hours away, and I'd drive all the way through the night to get back to be at work the next day. And I think he saw that it was more than just something to do, it was something I was really striving for and passionate about, and he started to encourage me a lot because I think he saw it for the first time. He and I never spent a lot of time together when I was younger because he had a career. Sure. But that really gave us a lot of time together. And so he actually came to me and he's like, at one point he was like, why don't you, if you're going to do this, why don't you do it? Why don't you move to Los Angeles or move to, at the time Atlanta was a big place because it was, you know, Seven Dust was from Atlanta and a bunch of other bands were from there around that time. And he said, why don't you move to Atlanta? Why don't you move to Los Angeles? Move somewhere where you can really make it happen. And he started to be very, very encouraging. So, yeah, he kind of changed his tune a little bit after a while. Yeah.
What age was this? Or do you
that was into my. I was in my early 20s at this point. Like, you know, I mean, I actually didn't start my first band until I was 19 or 20 years old.
Okay.
I sat in my bedroom and played music, and that's where the recording thing came in. Is I would, you know, I thought I had invented when I was 12 or 13 or 14. I thought I had invented the multi-track recorder. I didn't know there was such a thing, but I would take I had 3 sisters at the time, and well, I still have 3 sisters at this time. But I would take their stereos and I'd steal them and put them in my room, and I'd record myself playing guitar onto a cassette tape onto one of them because I could plug into the back, you know. And then I would connect that one to this one, play that tape into this one, and I'd play into this one at the same time, and I'd build these songs using these 4 stereos, not knowing that there was something out there called a multi-recorder, you know, multi-track recorder. And then my mother and father saw me doing this, and I think they knew that I was, I mean, it was a good exercise for me, and it was fun. But I think that eventually they got me a little Yamaha MT100 or something. It was a 4-track, little 4-track cassette recorder. And of course, me not knowing anything about any of that, my mother, like I said, she was a musician in the 60s and 70s. She had a 1969 Fender Bassman head and cabinet, this huge 100-watt Bassman 100. And I'd plug my guitar into that head and come out of the speaker output off the back into the recorder. Like completely blew this recorder up, I think, you know. But so I just spent a lot of time in my bedroom, like playing instruments and composing musical songs. Not really. I was never a lyricist, but you know, I got into, you know, Steve Vai and Satriani and Eddie Van Halen and all these people. So I would like play these instrumentals, you know, and I'd kind of record myself, you know. So I did that for years and sit in my room and learn how to play songs, and then you know, eventually you know, that kind of, like I said, kind of stunted my growth as far as like playing in a band. I didn't start my first band until I was 19. I had a garage band in high school. I mean, we messed around with friends and playing music, but nothing serious, you know, nothing playing original music or anything until I was older.